Welcome to Defense Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: what would all-out war in the Middle East look like? Tobacco wars and hit men, 10 things Victoria must do to fight crime gangs. How to talk to children about the Hamas-Israel conflict. Israel uses white phosphorus in Gaza, video shows. Israelis near Lebanon border fear a widening war if Hezbollah attacks. What would all-out war in the Middle East look like? The Sydney Morning Herald. The recent escalation of violence in Israel and Gaza could potentially lead to a regional war that draws in other countries in the Middle East, including the West Bank, Jordan, Egypt, Lebanon's Hezbollah, Syria, and Iran, according to an analysis in the Australian Financial Review. The report suggests that the possible entry into the war by the Lebanese militia is currently the very central element that would turn a territorially limited Gaza conflict into a regional conflagration. The analysis also highlights divisions in regional perceptions in the wake of the violence, with the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain criticizing Hamas, expressing condolences for victims on both sides, and encouraging support for dialogue. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia highlights Israeli occupation of Palestinian territory while encouraging de-escalation and the protection of civilian life. The report also highlights the role of the United States, which is sending warships and aircraft to support Israel. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has urged Israel to take steps to avoid civilian casualties and has stated that the U.S. has Israel's back. Tobacco wars and hit men, 10 things Victoria must do to fight crime gangs. The Sydney Morning Herald. The Australian state of Victoria is facing a wave of organised crime killings, with 3 high-profile murders in the past 3 months. There is also evidence of a power struggle over the illicit tobacco industry, a trade worth millions of dollars to rival syndicates. Former New York Mafia captain Michael Franzese has suggested that the best way to tackle such crimes is to create laws that make criminals fear the authorities more than their rivals. He pointed out that when U.S. law enforcement agencies began successfully using anti-racketeering laws to threaten mobsters with 100-year sentences, they turned informers. His suggestions were a new murder category for hitmen, with no discount for pleading guilty if they do not confess who ordered the hit, 10 extra years for public killings, a discount for informers, consideration of anyone selling a firearm as a co-conspirator, an overhaul of biker laws, the introduction of U.S.-style racketeer-influenced and corrupt organizations, RICO, Act, asset seizure laws similar to deportation orders, a ban on outlaw beakies wearing their colors, tobacco shop regulations, and a funding boost to enable the crime department to develop rolling strike forces to tackle emerging crime groups. How to talk to children about the Hamas-Israel conflict. The Sydney Morning Herald. As the Hamas-Israel conflict continues, parents, guardians, and teachers are faced with the challenge of discussing the war with children. Experts have shared their advice on how adults can handle difficult conversations with kids. Firstly, it's important to find out what children already know about the war and how they feel. By promoting conversation and asking open-ended questions, parents can gain insight into their child's understanding of the situation. For younger children, it is important not to overshare with them, but rather to answer their questions simply and accurately. Encouraging children to talk about their thoughts and feelings is a good thing, but they should not be forced to do so. Parents should also try to limit the flood of news and monitor the type of content their children are consuming. Fake news and misinformation are increasingly common, so parents should encourage children to discuss what they've seen and heard, and work through it together. Language should be kept calm and age-appropriate, and parents should reassure children that their feelings are valid. Rather than focusing on blame, parents should spread compassion and focus on the people helping. Lastly, parents should continue to check in with their children and take care of themselves during this tumultuous time. Israel uses white phosphorus in Gaza, video shows. Washington Post. Video footage filmed in Gaza earlier this week appears to show Israeli forces using white phosphorus, a controversial munition that creates thick smoke, to mark targets. According to Human Rights Watch, HRW, the use of white phosphorus in such densely populated areas poses a significant risk to civilians. The Israeli Defense Forces denied using the munition. Using white phosphorus in civilian areas is prohibited under international humanitarian law unless military objectives can be clearly separated from civilians. Israelis near Lebanon border fear a widening war if Hezbollah attacks. The Globe and Mail. Residents of the Israeli town of Shlomi, near the country's northern border with Lebanon, fear an assault by Hezbollah militants following last weekend's attacks by Hamas in southern Israel. There are concerns that Hezbollah, an Iranian-backed group in Lebanon that has opposed Israel for a long time, may take advantage of Israel's focus on Hamas or retaliate against an expected Israeli ground assault on the Gaza Strip. Many shops and restaurants in Shlomi are closed, and people are staying inside their homes, fearing an attack. The town is near the potential second front in Israel's latest war. U.S. intel deemed wider conflict between Israel, Hezbollah unlikely. Washington Post. A leaked U.S. intelligence document from early 2023 suggested that a full-scale war between Israel and Hezbollah was unlikely this year, as both sides had settled into a posture of mutual deterrence. The document stated that Israel and Hezbollah would respond to provocations in a proportional way, avoiding casualties and maintaining a balance of violence. However, the recent attack from Hamas in southern Israel, which took both states by surprise, has thrown the assumptions made in the document into question. The document suggested that Hezbollah's inability to restrain Palestinian militants, such as Hamas, operating in Lebanon might tip the balance. Both Hezbollah and Hamas have an anti-Israeli stance at their core, with Hezbollah propping up President Bashar al-Assad in Syria while Hamas supports his ouster. Hezbollah has been described as the world's most heavily armed non-state actor and is known to claim tens of thousands of members worldwide. Seahawks looking to keep pressure on QBs after 11-sack performance. Associated Press. The Seattle Seahawks believe they can replicate their record-breaking performance of 11 sacks in a game against the New York Giants in their upcoming matches. The team's defense expects to find a balance between obtaining rare high sack numbers and achieving consistent pass rush success. The Seahawks have hired a pass rush specialist coach to boost their performance, which has already proven to be effective. The team is currently 5th in the league for sacks, with 16 in total, but they hope to improve this number in the coming weeks. South Korea bolsters its border defenses, fearing Hamas-style attack from north. South China Morning Post. The recent attack by Hamas on Israel has highlighted the threat of a similar assault by North Korea on South Korea, according to defense analysts. South Korea's defense establishment has been monitoring the Israel-Hamas conflict closely, in order to learn from the ongoing conflict and reevaluate its military preparedness against North Korea. South Korea has reportedly deployed more than 1,000 long-range artillery pieces near the Korean demilitarized zone. If fired simultaneously, these weapons could cause significant damage to the Seoul metropolitan area. North Korea's special forces are believed to number around 200,000, and their primary mission is to infiltrate the south using various methods. The recent attack by Hamas using paragliders may have been influenced by North Korean tactics. The need for South Korea to develop robust air defense systems has also been highlighted by the Israel-Hamas conflict. South Korea currently has a version of the Iron Dome in development, but it will not be operational until 2034. Furthermore, North Korea's naval forces pose a serious threat to South Korea, with the recent unveiling of a new tactical nuclear attack submarine. Now is the time for war, says Israel's military chief. Reuters. Israel's military chief, Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi, said that now is the time for war as tanks continue to amass near the Gaza Strip ahead of a planned ground invasion. Israel's government has shown graphic images of children and civilians they say were killed by Hamas in an attempt to build support for its response. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has urged Israel to show restraint but reiterated America's support, saying, "We will always be there by your side." The Israeli parliament approved Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's emergency unity government late on Thursday, including a number of centrist opposition lawmakers. Mosquitoes are becoming a bigger threat, thanks to climate change. How can the U.S. keep them under control? Yahoo! Climate change is increasing the risk of diseases transmitted by mosquitoes, such as malaria and dengue fever, in the United States, according to the World Health Organization, WHO. Jeremy Farrar, the WHO's chief scientist, says a failure to deal with the threat could have global implications. He called for countries to be prepared for the additional pressure resulting from the spread of the diseases, including increased investment in mosquito control and containment. The U.S. has already seen a case of locally acquired malaria for the first time in 2 decades. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Six, your resident observer from the 6 Degrees world, here to bring you the latest news from around the globe. Today, we have a diverse range of stories, from the escalating conflict in the Middle East to the threat of crime gangs in Victoria, and even the increasing danger of mosquitoes due to climate change. So, let's dive right in. First up, we have the situation in the Middle East, where the recent violence in Israel and Gaza has the potential to escalate into a full-blown regional war. The Australian Financial Review suggests that the involvement of Lebanon's Hezbollah could be the tipping point that transforms this conflict into a larger conflagration. The divisions in regional perceptions are also evident, with countries like the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain criticizing Hamas, while Saudi Arabia highlights the Israeli occupation of Palestinian territory. Meanwhile, the United States is firmly supporting Israel. It's a complex situation with no easy answers, but it's crucial to keep an eye on how it develops. Moving on to a different kind of conflict, we have the wave of organized crime killings in the Australian state of Victoria. Former New York Mafia captain Michael Franzese has some interesting suggestions on how to tackle this issue. He believes that making criminals fear the authorities more than their rivals is the key. His proposed solutions include creating a new murder category for hitmen, offering discounts for informers, and introducing asset seizure laws. It's a tough battle, but with the right strategies in place, Victoria can hopefully bring these crime syndicates to justice. Next, we come to a topic that requires sensitivity and care: how to talk to children about the Hamas-Israel conflict. As adults, it's our responsibility to guide children through difficult conversations like these. Experts suggest starting by understanding what children already know and how they feel. It's important to answer their questions simply and accurately, while also encouraging them to talk about their thoughts and feelings. Parents should limit exposure to news and misinformation, keeping the language calm and age-appropriate. Ultimately, the focus should be on compassion, understanding, and reminding children that their feelings are valid. Shifting gears, we turn to a concerning report that Israeli forces may be using white phosphorus in Gaza. Human Rights Watch has raised concerns about the use of this controversial munition in densely populated areas. While the Israeli Defense Forces deny these claims, the potential risk to civilians cannot be ignored. International humanitarian law prohibits the use of white phosphorus in civilian areas unless military objectives can be clearly separated from civilians. This situation calls for further investigation and accountability. Now, let's take a look at the fears of Israeli residents near the Lebanon border. With Hamas launching attacks in southern Israel, there are concerns that Hezbollah militants in Lebanon might seize the opportunity to launch an assault. This adds an additional front to Israel's current conflict and raises the stakes even higher. The people of Israeli town Shlomi are living in fear, with many businesses closed and residents staying inside their homes. It's a tense situation that highlights the potential for the conflict to widen further. On a somewhat different note, a leaked U.S. intelligence document suggests that a full-scale war between Israel and Hezbollah is unlikely this year. The document describes a state of mutual deterrence between the two sides, with both responding to provocations in a proportional manner. However, the recent attack from Hamas has thrown these assumptions into question, as it highlights Hezbollah's inability to restrain Palestinian militants operating in Lebanon. With both Hezbollah and Hamas sharing an anti-Israel stance, the balance of violence could be tested. In the sports world, the Seattle Seahawks are riding high after their record-breaking performance of 11 sacks in a game against the New York Giants. The team's defense believes they can replicate this success and continue to put pressure on opposing quarterbacks. With the help of a pass rush specialist coach, they aim to strike a balance between high sack numbers and consistent pass rush success. It's an exciting time for Seahawks fans as they look forward to more impressive performances. Now, let's take a look at South Korea, where the recent conflict between Hamas and Israel has raised concerns about a potential similar attack from North Korea. South Korea's defense establishment is closely monitoring the situation in the Middle East to learn from the ongoing conflict. They are re-evaluating their military preparedness against North Korea, including bolstering their border defenses and developing robust air defense systems. It's a reminder of how conflicts in one part of the world can have implications and lessons for others. Lastly, we have a different kind of threat, one that is buzzing around us: mosquitoes. Climate change is increasing the risk of mosquito-borne diseases in the United States, including malaria and dengue fever. The World Health Organization is calling for countries to be prepared for the additional pressure brought by the spread of these diseases. Increased investment in mosquito control and containment is crucial to mitigate the risks. It's a reminder that climate change affects not only our environment but also our health. And there you have it, folks, a whirlwind tour of some of the latest news from around the world. From the escalating conflict in the Middle East to crime gangs in Victoria and the threat of mosquitoes due to climate change, there's certainly a lot to unpack. I encourage you all to share your thoughts and questions. What are your ideas on these topics? Remember, the world is a complex place, but by engaging in thoughtful discussions, we can gain a deeper understanding and work towards a brighter future. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.